Okay.
Also, am I supposed to look at the camera?
You just look at me.
Okay.
Like we're chatting.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So leading up to the game in the season, for that matter, you guys had a pretty strong team put together. I mean, you only had 5 or 6 players. You wound up finding 8 players total. Talk a little bit about the strength of the team. How y'all had a really good, strong team to go for state.
Well, for a small private school, we had 2 players that were going to play collegiately, and that's really rare. We also had a few other players who had played before and were really good, and then we also had 3 players that really had never played before. And so it was a lot of teaching and trying to get them into the flow of the game. One was a dancer, they had maybe played in junior high, and so varsity is just very different from junior high. So it was a kind of an even mix.
And you had a coach that had a lot of select ball experience too, right?
Coach Grimes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I actually played on his select team as an 8th grader before I had even come up to play varsity for him.
So let's see here. You only had 8 players. So it wasn't like you had just this, unbelievable basketball team. But then again, at what you said at the low private school level, having 2 college-bound players was like having a great team.
Yes, sir. And a lot of everyone kept saying we were this huge powerhouse, and we, of course, did not think of ourselves as a powerhouse. 2 years before that, the team had only won 1 game. And so it's just really interesting you hear what everyone else says, and then you actually find out the true story, that we were not a powerhouse, and just kind of happened.
And I guess that's kind of how the game happened too. It was kind of like the perfect storm. You guys had a nice team. They had kids that had never played basketball before, so it was kind of set up for a pretty wide margin of victory, wasn't it? And you guys didn't even know about the other team, really.
We knew nothing about the other team. I think at that point, there wasn't even really games that we could scout on them. I know that they had lost their previous game by a lot, but so going into it, we knew nothing about the players, we knew nothing about the school. They were new to our district, and so we didn't have a lot of background information for them.
Did Coach Grimes ever talk about before the game how maybe y'all would play differently if y'all did get up big or anything? Did y'all ever talk about anything like that?
No, really no strategy was ever talked about. Coach Grimes always wanted us to focus on playing our game and focusing on our team. And so we wouldn't change certain things just for another team, but we would try and just do things to the best of our ability. And if we thought that was the case, then we would win.
Now, talk about the players on your team a little bit, especially you. I mean, you had played with some pretty good players, and did you play with Chelsea Gray?
Yes, I played. So I played with Coach Grimes on an AAU team in 8th grade, and then I moved up and I played with Team Texas, and I also trained with Carlos Ratliff, and there I played with Whitney Hand and Alexia Standish, and then I went on to be on the California Storm AAU Nike team, and there is when I played with Chelsea Gray, who was the point guard at Duke. And so playing against all those great players really helped me strengthen my game and know what it would take to get to that level.
Great. So let's see here. So dark. Well, talk about your private school division or district, because there were a lot of blowouts in the district all the time. What was it? I mean, was this another game, a blowout, or how did y'all see it as?
That year there were a lot of wide margin games for us as well, but the only difference is that they scored on those wide margin games. And, it's just really hard because, especially at a small private school, I wasn't at the school for basketball. If I wanted to go to another school, I would have gone and played sports there, but it's the school so it really kept me. And so there were a lot of wide margin games, and, you just play to your best of ability.
I think that's a lot of people might not know that, but at private school, that happens a lot.
It really does. In a private school, you get one or two great players, and it goes a long way.
And then, what was I going to say? The 100-0. I mean, I guess that perfect score, 100 points, you hit the century mark, and then them not scoring at all. I guess that's what got the media's attention. That's what got the national media's attention.
I think the big thing on that, I think it's the 0 that stands out. Because after our game, I think about 2 weeks later after we had scored 100-0, there were other games that were wide margin. It was like 107-7, or I can't remember what the scores were, but it's the 0 that really stands out, that no points were scored. And so I don't think many games were over 100, and I don't think that really was special to anyone, even in high school girls. So I think 0 is the key factor on that.
Did they ever get a chance did they hit the rim? Did any of those balls ever get close to going in?
I think they did. I think a few hit the rim. We had a 6'4" girl player, Bryce, and if you have anyone above 6 feet in a private school, you're also pretty set for that. And so I think it was just a combination of that.
Did you ever talk on the sidelines of, in a huddle or anything, of trying to let them score, or just let them get a shot that go in or anything?
I mean, we got to the point where we were just going to try and pass it as many times as we could. But the thing comes down to, you are trained as an athlete to do the best of your ability, and you're trained as a Christian to glorify God in everything you do and say. And so not giving your best effort, I think really is not what we are called to do.
Talk about the first half of the game. There's been a lot of talk about the full court press and everything. Kind of go through the strategy, what happened the first half of that game.
So I remember, if I can remember, we put in a new press beginning of the district games, and that was, I think, only our second or third district game to play. And so we had put in a full court press, and so we started out the game in a full court press, and we went up. We kind of scored a few layups in a row, and so then from that, after we didn't even do it the full first quarter, and then after that we pulled it back and didn't go back into the press again.
So y'all stopped pressing full court in the first quarter?
Yes, sir. We didn't even do it the whole first quarter.
And then half court press or anything?
No other press. And
so did y'all stay in a zone, or how'd y'all?
I mean, I really don't remember, but I'm sure it was a zone.
Okay. At halftime, did Coach Grimes say anything to you guys? Let's work on something else. Let's not shoot the ball as much. Did he also talk to the coach about stopping the game?
Yes, Coach Grimes went and asked the coach before it was halftime. He said, "Do you want to end it now?" And the coach said, "No, let's just keep playing." And it was 59-0 at halftime. And so Coach Grimes said and tried to ask the other coach if he wanted to end it, and he didn't agree to it. So
what do you think Coach Grimes asked him?
I think there just kind of gets to a point that the game just kind of, you're not really learning much, and so you don't really want to keep playing.
Did you feel bad or sorry for the other girls?
I did, but at the same time, I'm very competitive, and so I just really focused on the game.
So you didn't get bored or anything in the game? As to, it's another easy layup for...
I mean, what I would do is if we had a breakaway, we would just try and pass it as many times or get it to the girls who hadn't scored or who don't score very much.
Do you think there should be some type of mercy rule like there is in other sports, in baseball and softball?
There wasn't when we played, and now there probably should be. And I think it would be a good idea just to kind of save awkward tension between coaches and players. You know that this is the case, and so there doesn't have to be that awkward conversation of trying to end the game or another something like this.
Do you think that would be a positive thing that would come out of this game if they did create a mercy rule throughout the country based on kind of your game, quite frankly?
I mean, I guess they could. I don't really know.
Okay. So the second half comes to a final halt to the game, and you look up and you see the score. What do you think?
I was just kind of in unbelief. I didn't really know what to think.
And then when you guys shook hands, it just seemed like another small private school game in a church setting that only a few people were there, maybe parents and so forth.
Yeah, it just seemed like any other game. I mean, we didn't even have a gym. We didn't even have a gym at our own campus to practice at. It really was in a church gym. And so we just went and shook their hands, and it was just like any other game.
And you didn't see anybody upset with the fans or the parents or the kids or the coach?
No, there was no uproar. There was no chaos. There was nothing. And all of the Dallas Academy girls really they were like, wow, y'all are really good. And there was no like hatred or tension between our team or their team or coaches or nothing.
So when did all the craziness start happening? A couple days later, a week later? When did you start hearing things? What was the first thing you heard?
I will never forget this. It really happened when the first news article went out. And I only knew that what I remember is that coming to school and everyone started talking and saying all these things, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And then somebody brought me a newspaper. And immediately when they brought me the newspaper, I read it. And since I was the captain that year, I pulled all of the girls together and we went in a room and I just said, listen, people are going to talk and we'll figure all this later. And we prayed and walked out. So it was when the first news article came out.
And so from there, it just ballooned and got bigger and bigger and became a national, ESPN, all this stuff. What were some of the things you remember? Any details with the stations or?
Oh my goodness. There were so many things. And being a junior in high school, I had never experienced anything like this. I remember we had a gate outside of our school, and there were news anchors and trucks and people wanting interviews lining up outside of the fence of our school. So we couldn't even go out. And I also remember going to practice, and there was news people waiting for us at the church parking lot. And this was after the game. And I mean, there was news articles everywhere. We were basically getting hate emails and just all types of emails from Australia and China. It was just very strange.
Do you think the internet kind of helped explode this with controversy and just people talking, maybe not knowing all the details and just seeing the score and just reacting to that?
Absolutely. If you were to go on YouTube right now, there are so many commentary, news, and commentary, I guess, documentaries, if you will, of people just saying their opinion, them reading things. And it was really interesting to go back and watch and just be like, these people are halfway across the world and have no idea what happened. And yet they take the time to fully voice their opinions.
Seemed like ESPN had a couple of people on both sides of the table. How'd you see that when you watched all that stuff?
What do you mean both sides of the table?
ESPN talking about, they had people talking, saying that, what you guys did was wrong. Other people saying, no, well, they shouldn't have scheduled the game, or that the team was so bad that it just wasn't a good situation.
Everyone is biased and everyone is going to point fingers different way from what side of the story that you hear. And so really, I really just focused on, I tried to not read any of the articles. I tried to not talk to anyone about it except for my family and the team, and really just was really kind of surprised at how much media it got.
Right after the game, you went home with your parents or your friends. Were y'all like, oh wow, we scored 100 points, or what was the talk?
I mean, I really do not even remember. I remember going home, doing my homework, showering, eating dinner, and going to bed. There really was no talk. It was just kind of like, wow, well, that's probably never happened before. But there was really nothing that would stand out.
So is it shocking to you to see 5 years later that's probably the biggest game nationally talked about of all time in high school sports?
Absolutely. It's so hard to believe. And I guess everything happens for a reason, but it's very shocking looking back and that it was 5 years ago.
Did you feel like you were the villain in some of this stuff? Was that tough for you and your teammates, where the other girls, another team, were being the victim type thing?
You know, on a personal note, it was very hard. And I've learned a lot of things from then. And I really just had to stick with the people that were close to me, who encouraged me and kept the whole team going. Even though we were the winners, it did seem like from the front part of the media and just everything that we were monsters. That's what it seemed like. And so it was hard. It really was, especially being in high school and having all the players turn to me also for guidance, because then with just switching of coaches and everything, I was kind of the liaison, which was hard as well.
Well, it seemed like it went from you guys then to the coach who took the fall for everything. How did you see that going? Were you surprised that he got fired? Did you see it coming, or?
I did not see it coming. I was very surprised. I love Micah Grimes. I would do anything for him to this day. We still keep in contact. He's a man of integrity, and he loves although he's around, and he truly cared about his players and would do anything for us.
It seemed like after he got fired, you guys still spent a lot of time with him and had a lot of fun with him.
We did. One thing that was really special about Coach Grimes was that he really knew his players, and I think that you really need to know your players to be able to use them and to be able to motivate them and even discipline them. And what would happen in practice if somebody was having a bad day and he knew it, he would literally pull a chair away and sit down and say, "Step into my office." And he would talk through that and he would make the other girls go do a drill. And then once whoever was having a bad day talked it out, she would go back. And so he truly cared about his players. And even later on, about 6 of us held a baby shower for him and his wife. And so we still keep in touch with him.
So whereas maybe the general public were being told he's this terrible guy, unsportsmanlike guy, you guys saw him as a real tender-hearted person who cared about each one of y'all.
Oh, absolutely. Did you realize how bad the game was going to get early on when you saw their skill level and everything? You know, I just kind of play in the moment. So I don't really know.
That's cool. Did Coach Grimes tell y'all to back off in the second half or do anything, pass the ball more, or not shoot?
I mean, we went back into a zone. We tried to pass it as many times as we could, make sure everyone touches the ball. You know, there's the fine line of embarrassing someone on the court as well as, you know, just playing hot potato and basically keep away. So there's just kind of a fine line between all that.
And did the 3 backups play a lot of the game then?
Yes, they did.
And how much of the game do you think you played then? I mean, in district games, there's a lot of times you sit out because you do get a big lead.
Right. You know, I really can't remember. I know that kind of everyone played an equal amount. We didn't have a second string. We had 8 players just like the other team did. And we didn't have a lot of girls in our high school either. And so we just played everyone and rounded around.
Looking back on the game 5 years later, is there anything more that anyone could have done to just shut down the game and say, this is crazy, let's just stop?
You know, that's really not my call. I really am I'm a player, and I was a player, and so I just kind of do what I'm told.
Good. I went all over the board, so I'm trying to go down the questions now. What did your parents say after the game? Was your dad happy? Your mom? What were they saying?
You know, I can't even remember. My dad is always very energetic, and so I'm sure he was very energetic at that point. But I think we just kind of went to dinner, went on with the rest of our days.
So nobody in the stands or anybody got real mad? Like you see some of these places where they get mad when something happens and they start fighting and yelling at each other or anything?
Yeah, there was no fighting, no yelling, nothing in the stands. It was all really calm. Nobody knew it was a big deal until the article came out.
Okay. Let's see. Did you become, I know we touched on this a little bit, but did you become overwhelmed with, once you saw the ESPN coverage and the more national coverage, did it become like, when is this going to ever end?
Oh, absolutely. I just remember lying in my bed one night, and I was so overwhelmed because it was really hard to still go on with life. It was hard to keep your studies up, keep focus up at practice, because we still had half of our season to go. And so I remember my dad always saying, "There's no such thing as bad press." And at the time you're thinking, of course there is. But really, it was almost like, when is this going to end, and why is this such a big deal?
Okay, let's talk about Micah a little bit. So, when he got fired and everything, we talked about that a little bit. So who came in to kind of tell me how the rest of the season went on? Was it difficult getting through the rest of the season after losing your coach? I'm sure mentally, emotionally, it's pretty difficult when you're so close to someone.
It was. Emotionally, it was really hard. I don't think we really understood, and we were really never told why. And also physically, it's hard because you started out with a system and a guy you trust, and you're kind of left with nothing. And so kind of how the season played out is, after he got fired, we had an elementary school coach for a week, actually, someone to just be there for us. And we kind of coached ourselves. And then a lady that I had trained with, her name is Selena Ho. She was one of the coaches at Oregon. And she had come down to Denton to work on her master's, and she had been training me. And so my dad and I basically asked her if she would substitute for the rest of the season. And so she came in, and, she is a phenomenal basketball coach. And so it was just a big change coming in. I knew her, and I knew her style, but my teammates didn't. And so it was just hard to kind of come in, but she was very generous to step in and allow her time to help us finish the season.
Do you think I'm sure she did a great job, but do you think the season would have gone a little bit better if you still had your old coach and maybe gone farther in the playoffs, or how do you see that?
I mean, honestly, I think we would have gone farther in the playoffs, not because of Selena coming in, but because of just emotionally, if that whole thing hadn't have happened, I think for sure we would have had more stamina near the end.
Did it make you not want to play basketball a little bit, or with all the adults and everything kind of getting into the situation?
Yeah, it was just really different. It was just kind of weird, different dynamics. And so it was kind of just a lot of trying to make sense of all the puzzle pieces.
So where did y'all finally wind up losing in the playoffs?
We lost at regionals to Sherman Texoma, who went on to win the state championship. And we knew that they would be the roadblock for us.
What was it like when y'all lost that game? It's like, was it somewhat relief, or you were just disappointed the whole season? What were your feelings?
I just remember having a lot of emotions. Some were good, some were bad. It was just a lot of mix, and I remember there were news reporters and staff at that game as well. And so it's really hard to just kind of keep your focus when there's so many outside things trying to push in.
Did you guys get a lot of emails afterwards?
We never got any personal emails. I do know that my name was the only one that was mentioned in any of the articles. And so that it wasn't necessarily a personal attack at me, but in some sense it kind of was. But there was never any personal emails or phone calls. It was more just kind of generic towards our school.
Did it pick back up after y'all lost that game a little bit on the internet, or?
You know, I really don't remember.
That's fine. Because I don't remember after that game that much happened, but.
I mean, I think more things were talked about. Like, it was continued to be talked about, the 100-0, but it wasn't necessarily about the regional game.
To this day, I know today when people are asking me what I'm doing, I said, yeah, I'm doing this documentary, this 100-0 game. Oh yeah, I remember that game and everything. I mean, it's just people that really aren't basketball fans or high school fans, but it seems like everybody knows about that game.
It follows me everywhere. I cannot go and I don't bring it up, but I cannot go, if it gets brought up, I cannot go somewhere without somebody, when it's brought up, knowing what it's talking about.
Do any of your roommates or friends out here at ACU know about that?
Some do, yes. And it wasn't by my mouth.
What did they ask you?
They just asked, they're like, oh, so what happened? And, you know, it's just really it's hard to explain it when somebody wasn't there, because it sounds a lot worse than really what the game was. Media-wise, if you were to be at the game and you were to realize what all the coverage and media that came about from it, you would be in shock, just like us.
That's good. Okay, talk a little bit about where you are now and what your future plans are and what you've been doing over the past 5 years. You've done the Olympics. It's pretty cool stuff.
5 years, wow, I feel old. So I came to AC Abilene Christian University, and I played basketball. And my junior year, we won the Lone Star Conference, which was very exciting. And then I also last summer interned with USA Basketball with Jerry Colangelo at the London 2012 Olympics, which was a great experience. I had never been to any Olympics. I had never been around that many athletes at once. And so it was really great networking opportunity, and just to kind of see how that system works. And I'm a senior at Abilene Christian right now, and so from here on out, I'm still interested in sports, whether that's in broadcasting, management, or marketing.
Cool. So that experience 5 years ago, what has it taught you? What lessons has it taught you since that time and now?
You know, one of the biggest things that game has taught me from now is I'm really going to look at headlines differently. When I read things online or when I read things in newspapers, I know that the headline is not the whole story. And so I'm always going to look at things differently. And when there was, details in newspapers or magazines about sports, whether they're wide margins or not, I'm just going to know that there's more details behind it. Because for our game, there was a lot of details that were not aware of. There was not public knowledge, and people just kind of expressed their opinions, and those became part of the facts that were not actually true. So
do you think in life that you'll think of people, when you hear something, you'll say, well, there's probably another side of the story. I like to hear both sides before I react or something?
Yes, there's two sides to every story, and you'll always hear that. And there's also, probably both sides are going to be biased. But at the end of the day, there's always more information than the headlines show.
Anything in particular sticks out again over that game? The media attention, losing your coach, people talking. Anything really stick out that you can think of 5 years later? What's the most important thing that sticks out?
You look back and you say, wow, that was 5 years ago. Really the thing that just sticks out the most is just how much attention it got in it's really crazy because why in the world would anyone want to know about a 2A private girls basketball team in high school that scored a few points? You know, nobody really cares about that. And so it's really interesting to just look back now and be like, wow, that actually happened.
Do you think adults maybe make bigger life out situation in sports than maybe it should have been? Because you girls, both sides, yeah, they're a little embarrassed they got beat that bad, but they were embarrassed that they didn't score, basically. Do you think they make, you know, adults make things bigger than what it should be, and then the media, of course, jumps on that?
I mean, I think you would say adults because kids don't always know what's going on, and they don't always know the bigger picture. And so I think adults have lived more. I really don't. I'm not really sure about that question.
Okay, that's cool.
I tried to come up with an answer.
No, that's all right. If you think of one.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I guess what I'm saying is, it seems like you guys were like, okay, you know, we won a big game, you know, by a wide margin. Another team was like, okay, we got beat by a wide margin. And then the media and everybody jumps on and goes, well, that's not right. That's not right. But in reality, if both teams are okay with it to some degree, is it really that big a deal, or was it a big deal?
I mean, I guess that all depends on the individual. Some would say it's a big deal. Some would say, who cares? And I think also, talking about adults, you know, as kids and as people in high school, you look up to adults because they mentor you, they give you advice, and especially your coaches are your adults. And so they're the ones that are helping you walk through this. And so that's why I think adults more so might kind of help you, guide you throughout this process.
Cool. Is there anything you would have done differently looking back?
You know, that's not really my call, and nothing really can be done now.
Good, good, very good. I think that's it. I think that's all you'd ask me to ask. If you ever coach a team, would you ever coach a team?
No. I would train. I would help girls and do private training lessons, but I would never coach a team.
Why is that?
You know, coaching's just not really. Coaching privately and private lessons is a passion for mine because I had many trainers in my life, like Carlos and Selena and Coach Grimes and George Quintero and California Storm, that all poured into me and helped me. And so I would want to pour into other girls. But I wouldn't coach as a team. I don't think I'd be very good at it, and I just wouldn't want to be under that pressure.
Okay, your dad wants me to do this. Look in the camera and say, stay tuned for more coming up next.
Stay tuned for more coming up next.
Very good. You're going to be good at this if you want to.
Yeah, we'll see.